Hello, everybody, and welcome to Panel Fest 2022. This is our third edition. We are excited to bring you another 2 days of panel conversations covering critical topics vital to the success of our industry. Huge thanks to Beer 30 by the Fifth Ingredient and Harvest Host for all your support on Panel Fest. It is our goal to not only have conversations on how we can brew better beer, but how we can also be better people. We're about to kick off a conversation discussing strategies on how brewery management and ownership can best provide support to their teams, as well as hear firsthand from staff who need to be supported. The goal here to create safer, more welcoming, more supportive, and successful workplaces. And now let's meet our guest. And Melissa, because you are to the right of me, you get to go first. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are and why this topic is important to you.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Melissa Welter. I'm the co-founder of Love City Brewing. We're a craft brewery and tap room located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We opened in 2018, so we're coming up on 5 years already, which is bananas. And this is a hugely important topic to me, mostly because of where I came from before beer. I was actually a therapist for about 8 years before I got into the brewing world, which is definitely a big transition, but also I use my therapist skills every single day. So it was hugely valuable training. So a lot of where I come from is that mental health background and wanting to make sure that everyone, in my brewery and across the industry feels really supported mentally, physically, emotionally.
I am so excited to dive into that angle. And thanks again for being here today, Melissa.
Yeah.
Lois, I'm excited to have you as well. You're out in the state of Missouri. What do you do in the world of beer?
Well, I am one of the bartenders for Ebb and Flow Fermentation. This is the third brewery I've worked in. I'm also now taking over the kombucha making and helping some with the production as well. And so it's pretty exciting. I'm really stoked. I think I'm also going to be the first female professional craft brewer in this Cape Girardeau area. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, thanks again for being here. Excited to hear your perspective. Now, LaShanda, I haven't seen you in a while. It's always a pleasure. But for everyone who doesn't know you on that level, tell everybody a little bit about what you do and why this topic is important to you.
So my name is LaShanda Poteat. I am a taproom manager for Little Brothers. I am a chapter leader for our Greensboro Pink Boots Society. I'm Black Beer Mom on Instagram. I feel like this subject is really a good subject for me because this is really my actual first small managing taproom experience, and I just feel like it's really important to be there for your employees, especially because I've been in situations where I feel like I've been treated very unfairly from management staff in previous places. I feel like it's really good to be open and very opinionated and be there for your staff.
Now, LaShanda, you stay quite busy yourself. How do you manage to take time for yourself and make sure you're taking care of everything that you need to in your life?
I typically don't leave my house on Mondays. It's my
Dedicated day off?
Yeah, I try not to leave my house on Monday at all. I literally just stay in my small house. I tend to my plants. I might watch a movie. I might clean, but I typically try to stay at home on Mondays.
I think Monday is a great day to do that. After I take my 3-year-old to school outside of today, I always try to go to a coffee shop for 2 hours, put my phone down, don't respond to anybody for the most part, and just kind of think about what I need to do to have the most success that week. So I think that's important. You take those Mondays. Kind of jealous you can take the entire day, honestly. Melissa, how about you? Being a brewery owner for 5 years now, when do you take that time for yourself?
Sundays don't go into work at all day for me for the most part, which is great. I'm very, very grateful that I'm able to do that now. We have a great team in place, so I can literally just step away and trust that they've got it and not have to worry about anything, which has been really good. I try to keep up with my hobbies. Like I've always been a runner. I like to exercise. I like to get out and be active. I like to knit and crochet and do my little fiber crafts at home. So I try to throw in some of that at least 1 or 2 days a week for sure.
I feel like I should knit or crochet. That way my phone is definitely somewhere I can't touch it. Seems like a really good trick.
Keep your hands busy. You can't text while you're crocheting.
So on those Sundays, what percent of the time would you say you abide by not going into the brewery?
I've been pretty good about it the past year, especially. Previous years, not so much, but I think the past year I've only gone in a handful of Sundays, maybe 3 or 4.
Well, awesome. Great sticking to it. Now I'm excited to welcome Nicki from Jefferson Beer Supply. Nicki, thanks for joining us today. It was awesome seeing you in St. Louis, getting to hang out face to face. But for everyone who hasn't had that opportunity, able to share a little bit about who you are and what you do in the beer world?
Yeah, so I've been a brewer for I've been a brewer for a chunk of years, like 8 or so years. But the last couple of years, my partner and I have been working on opening our own brewery in Jefferson, South Dakota. So it's just a small 5-barrel brewery in a pretty rural area. We're in like a town of 500 people or so. We're actually just coming up on our 1-year anniversary of our actual building. So before that, we were just doing pop-ups, and we actually just built a lemonade stand on our patio and just sold beer off of our patio, and like had like a radio and like some park bathrooms, which actually really worked out well. But anyway, so now we're going, and we have about 3 full-time staff. So myself, my partner, and our best friend, and then we have I think about like six or so part-time beer tenders. So we're talking about supporting our staff. That's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with.
I'm excited to hear some of the lessons you've learned and what's working out in Jefferson.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry,
Awesome.
I'm late.
Oh, no worries at all. Glad you're here. No, Lois, we're going to turn this to you. You're an employee at Ebb and Flow, and what is most important to you to feel supported by your ownership and management?
Honestly, Ebb has been super great. It's really a great fit for me. It's always like changing. We're always evolving. My boss is this like low-key genius, super down-to-earth human, but we're always being like, hey, here's a new idea. Hey, let's start. Our evolve game has really been really incredible. And they do allow us to do our job. They don't micromanage us. And they give us like anything we need to like help support that. So like we also have very open communication. We're very, very we're a really cool, healthy work family. And so I don't know, I couldn't be happier here, honestly.
So if you had to look at, you said you've been at 2 other breweries, correct?
Yeah.
If you were someday to go to another brewery, let's say not in Missouri, so Ebb and Flow doesn't feel like you're leaving them, but if you were somewhere else, what is that one thing you'd want to see management and ownership do to best support you? Like that one thing that you would have on your checklist of something you would need to feel to be on that team?
Honestly, creating a safe environment is like probably number one, because then I can do my job to the fullest extent if I know I'm supported and I feel safe and they trust my decision making for what I do. Just like honestly, just having that support really does help me tremendously, and then I can flourish from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, Lois. And then Melissa, LaShanda, and Nicki, you're all either in some role that's management or ownership. And I'm curious, from your perspective, instead of just calling all the shots, how do you make sure you understand your team's needs so you can best support them?
I feel like we try to do a meeting once every 2 months, somewhere in there, once every 2 months, just to get a feel on how everybody feels, how everything is going, so that I can address the needs that I feel have been missed. And typically most people are really responsive to that. Just being open and understanding and knowing that somebody is there to listen to them before they're like reprimanded.
Why do you feel your team feels that there's someone there to always listen to them? Like, how do you create that culture?
The 2.5. Well, I have 2 full-time employees and then like a bar back. So I just make sure that we have open communication through our group chats. Anytime that they need to come in and speak to me about anything, I'm always there to listen. We come from a small town, so the majority of us know each other. So my employees are friends of mine. So it's a little easier for them, I feel like, to be able to come to me and talk to me about something, whether it be at work or if we go out and have a drink after we get off work and maybe have a discussion or conversation, or just having lunch. My female employee is vegan. So me and her go on like vegan lunch dates, and she shows me things that I may not know in like the vegan world, and then I show her things to open up her mind in the beer world, because she doesn't know very much about craft beer.
that's arguably a whole nother conversation we can dive into, being friendly or lack of friendly with your coworkers. Do you ever experience any challenges with regard to, already being their friends because you are from such a small community?
No, we don't have any of those issues. I know where to cut it off before it goes to anything else that may affect us as being on a professional level.
Now, Nicki, you're also in a smaller area. Is that something you face as well? Already knowing the people who are working for you on more of a personal level, even prior to their employment?
Yeah, I mean, also mostly just because this is a family business too. So, like I said, it's my life partner. My mother-in-law is also part owner and does a lot of our accounting. And our one full-time employee is our best friend that we've, is like family to us. That we've lived with before. And actually, we all live like right next door to the brewery. It's like the brewery, our friend, and then us, literally all on the same block right next to it. So we definitely have to have a lot of boundaries. Like, now is time to talk about work, now is not. And in general, even like about the communication, and I'm sure a lot of people experience this too. We have so many all of our barbacks or beer tenders, whatever you want to call them, this is all their second job. And so definitely at first it was like a little bit of a challenge of like, how do I, like, I'm not seeing them all the time. I mean, I'm there at their shift, but it's like when they're working, it's not like they're there enough for me to have full on training or to go back to what Lois was saying a little bit too. I was also an employee at a lot of other breweries for a long, long time. And so a lot of times I think about like what I liked about jobs, what I didn't like about jobs. And for me, like the worst part of working at a brewery, or the thing that I've always made me want to leave, was not feeling heard. But like the challenges of like literally seeing your people enough to hear them is real. And so also because I'm like a little bit of a crazy input data person, I try to just like build a lot of that into the structure of the business. So for example, we have like mandatory 6-month employee reviews, even for like myself and our best friend and my partner. And sometimes actually in the beginning, it was really weird because it's like, everything's moving so fast. How do we make time to do an employee review? But it's really important to me because I knew from like past experiences, I didn't want to go all this length of time without checking in with people in like a formal way. It's one thing to say, are you okay? Do you need anything right now? It's another thing to say, how have the last 6 months been going? And like bigger picture, what do you need in the next 6 months? And so sometimes our employee reviews right now are even just digital, just to make sure I'm explicitly, like, I tell people all the time, let me know if you need anything, blah, blah. That's one thing. The digital employee reviews, are at least a designated space to say, let's talk, or what is going on. And it's not like the best solution. Like, there's lots of issues with digital communication, but it's like a real solution for what we're in the middle of right now.
No, I really appreciate you sharing that. I like how you have that short-term feedback loop, but also have those check-ins, 6 months down the road to kind of look back on more of things big picture. That's fantastic. Now, Melissa, what are you doing at Love City to make sure you're understanding your team's needs?
Yeah, I hear that about everyone's busy, right? Like we're all doing 5 million things in our respective positions. Like everybody is busy. Definitely holds true for me. But I do try to keep the lines of communication open. Everybody has my cell phone number. Everybody has our taproom general manager's cell phone number. We all have our group chats. I try to make sure I'm there at pre-shift every day. So for the incoming shift in the taproom in the evening, the general manager just does, pre-shift lineup, like what do you need to know for the evening? And I just try to be there, like just hang around, be in the background. And if things come up and they want to ask me questions there, great, fantastic. Like I'm right there. We also do, and I like to think that we have pretty open and good communication with our team. But we've also put in place a like anonymous like reporting link. It's just a simple Google form. But it's just, if you don't include your email, it's completely anonymous. So if there's something major that comes up that for some reason they don't feel comfortable coming to me or coming to the general manager, great, fantastic. Just put it in this little anonymous form and like we'll figure it out from there and we'll do what we can to address it.
What's something you've learned and Love City has learned from that anonymous forum?
It's just been mostly minor interpersonal issues at work. Thankfully, knock on wood, nothing too major. But it was just things like things that people were observing, like basically like people not quote unquote pulling their weight on shift, but not wanting to rat that person out like to management and have that whole formal conversation and whatnot. So it's just like a little tip off saying like, hey, can you please check in with this person? I don't feel like they're doing everything that they need to be doing on shift. Simple
Awesome.
things like that, but.
And, you know, when you receive those submissions from that forum, does part of you wish that person would have come to you to have that conversation one-on-one?
Sure. I mean, I very much would prefer having that conversation directly. I think it can lead to much more like a greater understanding of what the actual issue is. But in the absence of them being comfortable about that, this is fine. Like, this is totally fine. At least I know. I would rather know in any way that you're comfortable telling me than not know. So that's totally fine.
Absolutely. And what are some strategies you brought in from your past career as a therapist that help out with these interpersonal, you know, situations that may come up from time to time?
Yeah, like I said, every single day. Use those skills every single day.
Okay, top 3 right now.
Happens all the time. It's listening, like literal active listening. I've come to realize is a skill that you have to learn and you have to practice. And so just being trained to do that for 8 years straight is just like, okay, I am actively listening to you. I'm actually hearing what you're saying. I'm not trying to interrupt. I'm not trying to jump in with what I have to say. And that in itself has diffused so many situations. It's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, Lois, earlier on, I believe you touched on that you like being part of the conversation. You like being there when you're brainstorming, talking big picture things. Why is having a voice important to you?
Well, we're all trying to create something. And so if we all are on the same page, we can be using that energy to be going in all in the direction. Like, I just feel like it just makes things a lot more, they flow a lot easier, you know? It's like, okay, we're all on board. This is the direction we're going. And then to be able to almost like have some skin in the game too, because it's like I'm helping create this. It really helps you be kind of part of that bigger picture as well.
Now, when you started at Ebb and Flow, were you looking at it as just another brewery job? Or, you know,
Oh,
if so,
no, honestly, I tried one of Dwayne's beers. He had like a guest tap at one of the breweries I actually used to work with before I worked there. And I was like, who is this? This is like something really special what he's doing here. And when they opened, I literally had a script of why he wanted to in my head, why he wanted to hire me, because I did help another brewery open up in a small town and was like one of their main bartenders and then became their only bartender at one point. The other bartender had to get back surgery. So I put a lot of love and energy and so much time and energy into this space. And so when they opened up, it actually didn't really quite work out where I got to talk to him and ended up going to another brewery that I was really good friends with the owner, knew him for quite a while. And so it was just a beautiful transition with that. Ended up having a hiking accident. And actually, that's kind of how I ended up at Ebb all the time. And they're like, hey, we would love to have you. And so it was kind of just this really beautiful transition of how I got here. And I feel like it was actually the perfect time when I got here. And to be a part of what they're doing here has been really, really incredible. I wanted to just honestly learn from what they're doing here too, because it is a lot different than some other craft beer. We do a lot of wild fermentation. My boss actually cultivates yeast, and he had like this mad scientist. Oh my gosh, the way we utilize our space is pretty wild. But like when I first started here, we would have all our kegs all stacked up and then these milk crates full of like all these wild yeast strains. I was like, oh my God, like you have to carefully move this, change my keg, and then move this precious cargo back. But I wanted to be a part of this mostly just because what we were doing here. And I wanted to learn from these type of people that are doing all these really incredible things. So
I love your energy there. I mean, it's apparent that you didn't want just the job pouring beers. You wanted to feel invested in the company, and you wanted to feel the opportunity, you know, to contribute, which is amazing.
Oh yeah, it's been really awesome. Yeah.
So for Melissa, LaShanda, and Nicki, you know, obviously Lois, employees like Lois, you know, not every employee is going to be like her. And some people, you know, want to be there just to pour pints, and that's fine. And some people want to get more involved. How do you give your teams the opportunity to contribute? At this point, unmute. Let's just, you know, have at it.
Yeah. No, I'm at the brewery. We're like cleaning tanks, so it's like loud. But yeah, I mean, I would say the beer industry is very different than it was even like 2 or 3 years ago. And like, I would say that actually almost everyone that works at a brewery wants to work at a brewery. They, you know, brewery, like, let's be real, breweries are not good paying jobs anymore. Like, you know, the reality of the, you know, I am totally for people needing to get paid at equal wage. I know we're going to talk about that more later. But the reality is that breweries are small businesses, and like a lot of breweries do not pay well. So if your employees are there, they want to be at a brewery, and they want to be at a brewery because either they want to be engaged in production, they want to be engaged in something exciting, they really like your community, or they really care about the space. And so, like, and for us being a new small brewery in a small town, every single one of my people want to be here. They're not here to make money. And so one big way we let people be involved is every year, every single employee gets to make their own beer. And like, on the one hand, we can do that because we're a small fibril system. So we can be a little bit more flexible with our taps. You know, maybe if you're at a bigger place or you have different types of market demands, you couldn't do something like this. But and for us, like, that means they're in charge of, they get to be the director of every part of it. If there's a certain charity they want to partner with, if they really just want to make the name, if they want to have a special event for it or whatnot, and people engage. We're starting on the first ones now, and people are engaged on all different types of levels. You know, some people really want to use these hops. Some people really just like this name of the beer. And I think that whole ethos kind of extends to like other things about the brewery too. Like, I really do. I think all of my beer tenders are like, all my employees are bringing something unique to the table too. And I always try to, utilize that in a selfish, self-serving way too. Like, you know, I have some of my bartenders are starting their own businesses, so we let them use the space like for pop-up events, like food events, or we had a photo session the other day. Or I have another bartender that's really enthusiastic about like games and trivia and whatever, and it's just like being open and flexible to what they want to do is huge for us. Sorry, now we have a train.
I love it.
But yeah, so I try to just like let this space literally be their space too. And there's other places where I've worked where they hold on to that a little bit tighter. And like, as a business owner, from a selfish perspective, like, not holding on to that is like super beneficial. You know, then they bring all their people, they bring their own energy, you know, they're giving so much to us. And then they also feel like ownership of the space, you know.
And they're proud to share it. Exactly. No, Nicki, hate to make you unmute again, but is there something you've learned? Is there something when you've tried to give, you know, that empowerment to the employees that hasn't gone the way you expected?
No, not really. I mean, it's almost even like every time I do it, it makes me lean into it more. You know, like for my one beer tender really wanted to do a music bingo, and that nobody here does music bingo. I don't know. I didn't know what music bingo was. I was like, whatever, you know, let's try it. And now it's like awesome. I'm like, ooh, what other ideas does she have? Or the same with the like make their own beer thing. You know, then they become agents for that beer. Then they want to sell that beer even more. And it's the same with like partnering with other small businesses. You know, like, it's only a win-win situation. And I mean, I guess I could see why other people have more tighter visions for their space or whatever, but for us, it works.
I mean, it sounds like your team are your best partners, which is amazing. Melissa, how about you? You know, what strategies have worked for you to, you know, give your team a place where they feel open and contributing?
Honestly, the best sort of ideas have for us come through just like very casual conversations. like just sitting at the bar after work, having a shift beer with folks, and then just get to talking about whatever. And then something comes up and you're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And it's, it's different. I think different brewery side versus front of house side. So brewery side, it's a little more formalized. It's a little more like, okay, this person is really into barrel projects. That's their focus. That's what they're doing. This person loves the packaging line. And we kind of scale their training around their interests. Obviously in communication with them to say, if they want to change that or do something different. And then front of house, it just tends to be very like casual and like, hey, how do you guys feel like things are going? Do you have any thoughts about what we could be doing better? Again, just using those pre-shift meetings really, and then our group chats to follow up on stuff like that. Like 2 of our bartenders are really into cocktails, and that they love beer obviously, but they also really love cocktails. And so when it's time to change the seasonal cocktail menu, they're all over it. And they're like, okay, here's the recipes, here's what we want to do. That said, like, I do have to sometimes rein it in a little bit to be like, okay, look, it sounds delicious, but are we doing a 6-step cocktail like during busy Saturday? Maybe not. But again, it's just like, if we can't take your idea and we can't do it, I'm going to talk to you about that as well. I'd be like, look, here's why we can't do this right now.
Awesome. No, Nicki, I think you referenced earlier, you must feel a little guilty, taking all these great ideas from your team, because it's great having that involvement from everyone, in your brewery. So how do you all reward and recognize those who are contributing at a greater level than what they're hired for?
We do outings, like at least when we do those meetings, so you don't feel like you're only getting reprimanded or everything's just bad like at the meeting, which it normally isn't. But so we go on a staff outing afterwards. We went to the state fair. I don't know what we're going to do the next time, but and I ask them their opinions on what they would like to do to make sure that everybody is included and everybody doesn't feel like we're just doing something that I want to do or just something that Joe wants to do or something that Susie wants to do. We're trying to like brainstorm and make it something that everybody is comfortable and okay with doing.
Awesome. Now, Lois, what does Ebb and Flow do, or what have you experienced at other breweries, that makes you feel appreciated for contributing at a larger level?
They definitely like Dwayne will sit and have a conversation, or we'll go on a walk around the block and be like, hey, I want your input. I want you to know like what's going on, how you feel about certain things, especially before we like implement. He really does make sure we talk. He also we had a time where we had a meeting that turned out to really just be a staff employment meeting. It was appreciation day. He had like a charcuterie board he set out. We had a massage therapist actually, so we all got massages, and then it took some of what we usually do for boils, like one of the smaller ones, and he had like an Epsom salt foot soak, and so we all just got to really kick back, and we do take time to like really kick back. Like, we are an awesome team here. It's pretty bare bones, but we're all very, very close, and we all are very comfortable talking to each other if we do have anything that comes up or has any ideas. Like, everyone's pretty open to hear and listen.
Awesome. Nicki, how about you? What are you all doing at Jefferson Beer Supply when those employees are contributing the level you mentioned? How are you rewarding them, recognizing them outside of them feeling like they have a place that's more their own?
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for this, but I don't. We don't have anything formal in play. I mean, we do staff appreciate parties and whatnot, like everyone's talking about. But we are like still super young. I guess like with some of them, it's like, ooh, I know that as soon as I can offer a full-time bar manager position, you would be a good fit. Or I let them take on more responsibility. Or like our person that does music bingo, I pay her for her time outside of, I pay her to plan the event. I'm not like, hey, do all this shit for me and do it off the clock. I would never ask that of her. So I guess the only, and this sounds like a trite owner thing, but I try to make sure that they have a good job, that they like, there's free beer. And again, this is like, it's coming from I'm on that, like, please run my brewery for minimum wage group and relate so much to so much of the things that get said in there. I know the horrible owner that just gives free beer and pizza memes and all of that. And And so I hate, I wish I could financially compensate my people. Like, I wish I could say like, oh, you did awesome this year, like here's your bonus or something. But that's just not, that's the reality is we are not there yet.
I think a difference between you and those memes is exactly what you just said. You're not there yet, which means you are on the quest to get there and constantly provide better for your employees. And I heard in another interview with you, Nicki, that you someday want to offer an employee stock ownership plan. Why is this something you want to do?
Yeah, I think employee stock ownership is awesome. So if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a system where, like in the ownership structure of the business, an employee stock ownership, the abbreviation is ESOP. So the ESOP becomes an actual like person or trust that has ownership of the business, and then each employee gains a share like for however many hours they work. And so there's a couple there's many reasons why I want this, and you should cut me off of some rants, but like at the center of our business is we're pretty serious about like taking control of the means of production and like working seriously towards building wealth in our community. And so that's why ESOP is important to us. And beyond that too, like I am so sick of like small businesses saying they're employee owned, they're family owned, and really that means like one or two dudes owns it and also gets a paycheck. Like that's not employee ownership. And what comes along with employee stock ownership is an ethos of like we're all doing this together and we're all profiting from whatever we're putting into it. And so I've worked for some other like bigger ESOP breweries before as well. And like even legally, the trust or the entity has to have a say in the business. So like before we started this, we thought a lot about like, does a co-op make sense? Do these other systems of ownership make sense that are actually equitable? And for us, like ESOP is the thing that makes the most sense. And there's also like the Craft Brewery Financial Podcast. They have an episode just about ESOPs. And there's this guy who like runs a bank who helps turn breweries into ESOPs. So it's a little bit of a long game thing. Like your business has to be profitable enough for the to buy like a chunk of the business into the ESOP, and that or all of it. If you have like some very generous owners that were like, I'm going to give 100% of the shares, which means the owners would have to lose whatever money they put into it. So it's going to take us a minute to get there. But if anyone is looking for examples of ESOPs, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of ESOP breweries, specifically big and small, and there's a lot of really good information.
And shout out to my buddy Carrie Shumway, who will actually be on the next Panel Fest conversation at 1 p.m. today for understanding brewery economics for production profitability. That Craft Brewery Finance has a lot of really great, insightful conversations there as well. Now, what I want to dive into now, we've talked a little bit about fun things like pizza parties, massages, like outings. All that is fantastic, and people really enjoy that, but they also want to be paid fairly. And our 2022 Employee Satisfaction Report, base pay is the number one factor contributing to future happiness. Lois, you talked earlier about the comfortable conversations we're having. Often conversations around compensation can maybe be a little uncomfortable. How do you all succeed with these conversations discussing money and what your employees want to be paid?
Well, with our brewery here, we do things a little bit differently with our pay. We actually do a whole week tip collection share. So even if you have that shift where it's like super duper slow, we actually section out our tips for the credit card tips anyways, based more on your hours. So we're all in it together. We all want each other to be able to pay our bills and things like that. So when they brought that conversation up, we actually were pretty on board with that. We're like, yeah, we're going to be a little more socialist maybe. But we also wanted to make sure, because sometimes it is like way slower, or sometimes like we're really, really busy. And if we know like we're all in it together, it's really kind of cool to show up and how we do that here. So our checks stay somewhat consistent. So that's definitely, I don't know. I think that's definitely helpful. And like, I'm one of the ones who typically work on the weekends and stuff and things when they are busy. But sometimes I have that Tuesday where I'm like dead as heck. And so doing all the extra cleaning or extra things to prep us up for when we have that crowd come in. But that's definitely like how we do it here. And I actually really appreciate it. It is really nice to make sure, like, because yeah, we all love each other. We all want our bills paid. And so when we're all in the fat, we're all in the fat together. When it's a little bit lean, we kind of buckle up and we're in it together. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, we're a pooled house as well. We do it per shift for front of house. So everybody is pulling their weight on shift. Everybody's making the same amount of money. I will say things changed a pretty great deal during and immediately after pandemic times in Philly. We were shut down for a while. Everything was really, really tough for a while. And then things started to reopen and we started to see some places paying pretty high wages plus tips for bartenders. And I was just like, financially, like I'm not this big restaurant group. Like we are one small business. Like I can't pay you, $15 an hour plus tips. Like that's just not going to work for our bottom line here. But in acknowledgement of the work that everybody was doing, we did double their base rate pay. So in Pennsylvania, it's like $2.83 an hour for tipped wage. So we at least doubled that for them in acknowledgement of like, we understand this is a really tough job right now. We understand it's been really tough for the past year and a half, and we appreciate y'all still sticking around. And we did have through like March of 20 to March of 21, we retained 80% of our staff, which during that time period is pretty damn amazing. So I'm very, very proud of that.
That's awesome.
And we do tend to keep an eye on like the industry standards in terms of salaries. So for like brewers and management level, we look at the BA and their industry standards. And I also have found myself using the MIT living wage calculator. You can do it for your individual area because like, $40,000 in Philadelphia is not the same as $40,000 someplace else. So looking at that has also been really helpful for us.
No, that's definitely a great resource. LaShanda, how about you? You mentioned that you have a lot of friends who work with you. How do you handle those conversations about compensation?
I don't have to have those conversations, but we do. So it's the money that you earn on your shift is your money. They make an hourly rate. I'm on a salary and I still bartend. So it makes up my difference in my wages, my salary, because my salary is not that high because I still am a bartender. Unless we do like larger events, we don't split anything unless there's somebody actually working with you. So a lot of times we advertise through like our social media to have our friends come in because it's our shift that we're working. So we kind of make our own money.
Now, LaShanda, you're in the middle ground because you're not an owner, but you're not just an employee. What tips do you have for employees to approach conversations on compensation, with the bosses?
You just have to have it. It's just an uncomfortable conversation that you're just going to have. And these conversations should become comfortable. It shouldn't be something you feel like you should be uncomfortable with having a conversation about how you're living. Because if the brewery is definitely doing well, there should be a way for you to have that conversation and let them know, hey, I work these shifts. My sales are really high on these shifts. How can I get a little more compensation for what I'm doing? If you do anything, any extra, I do receive a bonus based on our sales through our tap room. So once we hit a certain amount of sales, then I do receive a bonus. So that bonus, the amount of times that I get that bonus is based on what I do in my tap room to increase my sales.
And are those goals you're given attainable?
Yes. Yes, they are.
I think that's an important part. They can say, we'll give you this bonus when you hit X number of marks, but those goals need to be realistic, I believe.
The first time I heard it, I was like, wow, that's going to be hard. And then I got the bonus and I was like, oh, that wasn't a long amount of time that I actually had to wait to actually receive that bonus. So now it comes very frequent and I can predict pretty much when it's going to come now.
Good for you. Nicki, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the compensation topic.
Yeah, because we're in a rural area too, and we pay a lot per hour for bartenders just because we have to get people here, but on the other hand, and maybe this isn't the same everywhere, but where we live, like literally if people want a better job, there's better jobs, literally. Like there's jobs that pay more literally everywhere. You know, we're in a really high manufacturing production area, and there's a lot of jobs to be had right now. And so if people are here, they want to be here. And so we pay pretty high hourly to get people here. But also, like, one silly thing is, like, I make sure, and we tip share per shift, but a lot of times we only have one person on, so there's not a lot of actual sharing. But I just make sure too, I'm looking at every single check. Like, I don't write the checks. I have someone else that does the accounting. I make sure I'm looking at every single check and make sure everyone is making enough tips and that things aren't getting out of hand. I also like directly just ask on the employee review. And that's again why I think, like, I just say, like, are you making what you need to make to be here? And that's again why I think employee reviews are so important. And if you're like working at a brewery and you're not getting employee reviews, that's like another good way to be like, you know, we need to put this system in place for employee reviews. How often do they happen? How are they going to happen? And this is important to me. And then, you know, then like any employee knows, like, well, in 3 months I'm having a review, so we can talk about it then or whatever, because it's hard to have these conversations just on the fly or finding the right time for them. I would also say too, though, that like beyond compensation, there's a lot of things that we do or that I think are why people like want to stay here. Like, you know, I can't offer health insurance, but like I can give you a ride to the VA or the, you know, and I do. My one full-time employee, he we can't offer health insurance, but I got him hooked up with his VA rep and like found him some other resources for health insurance, and sometimes I help him that way. Or like other employee, like a lot of my people are part-time, so they're not looking for health insurance here, but like, you know, the one I'm helping start her business, you know, or a lot of my employees like have very flexible scheduling. Like my one production employee basically just works whatever hours he wants to work. And again, I'm not saying like give your employees pizza and beer, but I am saying there are things that your employees value besides money. And it's really important to know exactly what they are for each person and what's doable and what's not for you.
That last sentence just nailed it. I mean, each person has different expectations and goals, and get to the bottom of what they are and make that experience customized for them.
Yeah, I mean, I have one employee who really is passionate about going forward in front of house beer service. And so I know he's here because he wants to learn about production. You know, he wants to learn about hops. He wants to learn about beer. And so like I invite him to every single brew day, collaborative brew day, because a collaborative brew day is already a time for learning and education and talking. And then there's other employees that like, yeah, brewing's fun, but that's like not that important to them. You know what I mean? So
yeah, everybody has unique goals. Now, let's dive into that. And Nicki, you touched a little bit on training. And from that 2022 employee satisfaction report, we found that only 66% of workers agree that they have someone to ask questions about their role. Obviously, training is a huge part of supporting your team. You know, how do you all make sure you're giving your team the skills for success? So let's actually start with you, Lois. You know, how is your brewery providing you the tools you need to be successful?
I mean, like I have a lot of self-motivation as well, and they allow me to do what I do, but they definitely make sure like I know, or if I have any questions, like I can easily talk to my boss that owns the restaurant or the brewery. He also owns a restaurant, so he's kind of in and out every which way. But honestly, like I'm already very passionate about what I do here. So it's pretty easy for me, I guess. Like they also really allow me to be pretty flexible because this isn't the only thing I do. I also have like where I do intuitive healings and like witch doctor stuff on the side. So they also make sure that I have the time and space to do that. They care that I'm tired or not tired. So like I always feel like, hey, I'm here, let's do this when I show up.
And when you started working at Ebb and Flow, I mean, it was your third brewery. Do they have any sort of specialized training when you first came versus saying, hey, you worked at 2 breweries before, you know what to do?
I mean, yeah, like I did a couple of shifts, but honestly, this is kind of my flow too. So it was very like, yeah, they definitely allowed and trained me, but it's also something that I pretty much pick up. It's like, oh my gosh, this space, it really does feel like I was like meant for it and they were meant for me. It was a very much match made in heaven. So I don't even know how, I'm not really answering this question very well, I don't think. But they definitely did train me, like, and they did brought me on, and I already knew a lot about what they were doing because a lot of the times our brewery that I was at was just like up the street a little bit. So on my breaks or anything like that, I would be here and eating lunch and hanging out, and like I was already really passionate about what they were doing here, and so I was already kind of very much aware of what I was signing up for when they asked, "Hey, do you want to come on?"
And it sounds like there's a culture of trust too, where you feel comfortable asking those questions. If you want to learn something and don't know how something takes place, you're going to ask that question and feel like you're respected.
Oh, absolutely. Like I really good friends with a brewer here. Like we're all, because we are such a small community, and like downtown Cape is also pretty small. It's a really special place though. It's a very much a gym. And the way that everything is growing, we have now 3 breweries and we all like love and support each other, and we send each other customers, especially when they come through. It's like, oh yeah, you have to check this out. You have to check this out. I was like, you can brewery hop in downtown Cape Girardeau. But like just being a part of the craft beer, like we all have our own flavor. And so I don't know, it was just such a natural transition when I came over here. That
Certainly
yeah, it was kind of I didn't really need a whole lot of training because I already kind of put that on myself anyways. Like when I first learned about craft beer, I started making myself flashcards and tasting as many beers as I could. And like within 3 weeks of like not knowing what craft beer was to being like Cicerone beer certified, like as a beer server. So I do take a lot of initiative on my own, but they also very much allow that and empower that as well.
That's fantastic. Now, Melissa, you've almost hit that 5-year mark. What are some of the strategies that have been successful for you all, both in front of house and back of house, to make sure your team is properly trained for their roles?
Yeah, it's always been informal, and I'm now 5 years in trying to formalize it a little bit more. It's very much been folks are self-motivated and they kind of pick and choose what they want to learn about. Simple things like we have a pretty significant in-house library. So all of the BA publications, we try to keep those in stock on our shelves. So if somebody wants to read it, great, fantastic, go get it. We rely on a lot of the BA resources, our state guild, the Brewers of Pennsylvania, as well as Master Brewers Association of the Americas. They do technical weekends and technical talks, and we try to send folks as much as possible to those kind of things. Like CBC, when it's feasible for us to send some folks there. We've done that in the past. But looking forward to actually like creating a training plan during employee reviews. That's where my brain is at because we're doing them this month. So ideally, by the end of the month, we will have conversations with everybody and kind of outline a training plan for the next year and learn what they want to focus more on.
I'm going to send you an email in like 30 days, seeing if you've done it. Just stay
on top. God, okay.
Good luck getting through it.
Thank you.
LaShanda, how about you? What type of training is there at Little Brother?
We just do like a just basic overview of everything. I feel like my bartenders right now they're just beer tenders. They don't have the motivation in the craft beer industry that I have, but some of the employees at the other locations are. So one of our beer tenders actually went to he's in production now. So he's pretty much like our assistant brewer. He does that. He does going out and doing like sales in the industry. He's, I believe he cleans like the tap lines and everything in the tap room. So he's been very like more like self-motivated and trying to get into the actual stuff. The ones that I have, not quite as much. I mean, they listen to what I have to say about everything that's going on in the craft beer industry, but I just don't think they're there for their job.
That's a really interesting point. So how do you handle employees like that who are looking at it more so than a job, and how do you take that attitude and try to convert it into being a rock star?
So I just tell them to basically make sure you know like basic styles, know a little bit about what we have on draft. As our beer changes on the draft board list, just take your time to look at it, maybe taste it. Even and I always tell them, don't tell somebody you don't like it. You need to be selling the beer, whether you like it or not. So you need to know a little bit about the tasting notes. You need to know a little bit of information about what you are trying to sell. Because if you were at a chicken wing place selling chicken wings, you would be selling the wing flavor that you decide that you want to sell, whether you like that or not. So you still have to be a salesman, even if it's not what you really are into.
And you have a very energetic personality, and I'm sure you're able to get them excited about it. Nicki, how about you? I'd love to hear your thoughts more so on, how you're properly giving your team, both front of house and back of house, those skills.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard sometimes, is the truth. I also am just like a huge proponent in every part of the business of just having things written down and having systems in place. So an employee handbook, I think, is really important to be clear. And there, even if it's just one sentence about this or one sentence about that. Also, super simple thing. It literally took me like 10 minutes to make. I have a checklist for all front of house employees, making sure they've been more or less cleared on all of these things, even just for my brain, just so that I'm making sure I communicated this to them. It's not even really about that. Pouring beer isn't rocket science, but there are important things. And then in back of house, it's been super interesting, challenging in a fun way. Like I'm not one of those people that thinks that brewing needs to be really tightly held. I think if you're a really good brewer, you can teach someone else to brew. So, but also this is like totally new equipment. So it's like some things I have to learn myself before I can teach anyone else. So both in front of house and back of house, maybe this is because we're young too. I'm just making sure I'm like literally there working with everyone at least sometimes. And in back of house, like our assistant brewer has been learning with me the whole time. He installed everything with me, and it's definitely been like there's been some learning curve of like he can take on this, but like I need to there's still so much stuff to show him all the time, and sometimes it's hard to remember what you have and haven't showed them. And so one way we're dealing with that right now is I'm like having him write the SOPs, standard operating procedures. And if you don't have standing operating procedures, like at least start on them. And again, it's another way to like empower your staff too, like even front of house, like what is your draft opening procedure? Empower one of your employees to write it themselves and then go over it with them, because then it's a way to like double check everything, make sure you're on the same page, and give them agency to like have some say in how it's done. So my short, I guess, is standard operating procedures, employee handbooks, and being there with them, working with even all my beer tenders too, making sure I get to work with them sometimes, especially when there's something new.
Those are
I didn't realize how important those SOPs were until I'm going through the draft line cleaning thing that they gave through the Brewers Association, and that's like one of the biggest things that they say, having that standard operating procedures in place, and also knowing your hazards before it actually happens is very important.
Yeah, I would also say too, taking advantage of free resources like everyone else is saying. So like really simple things like making sure your employees have, like if you're paying for a BA membership, make sure your employees have a login to their BA profile. Or if you're an employee, ask your employer for their login. Collab brew days, again, including as many people as possible, and things like not making things like exclusive, just like opening up as much things that are already going on goes really far. And we do have real incentives written into our handbook. If you get your Cicerone you get this bonus. If you already have your Cicero when you come on, you get this bonus, and then bigger bonuses for working higher towards that. And then I also have it in the back of house side too, some different certifications. There's, financial incentives for getting those. And like, again, we don't have a lot of money, but like any employee that would do any of those, the return I would get from that is so huge that it's worth it for me. So
I love it. Investing in your team, and all the concepts we discussed today, they relate not only to best supporting your team, but creating that sense of belonging that all of you have talked so much about. That's going to contribute to your overall success, and you all have offered just fantastic insight. So now I want to talk about one final thing. What's something brewery owners, managers, and staff should do right now after listening to today's conversation? Is there that one thing you hope someone takes away and does?
Being there for your staff, listening, no matter what it is, just listen. Even if you can't give them a solution to it, listen to what they have to say, because they may not have anybody else to talk to about it. And it may not have anything to do with your brewery or what's going on. They just may need somebody to talk to about how they feel that day. Just be open and listening to your staff.
Awesome.
LaShanda totally stole mine, so I'm going to have to go in a different direction. No, it's great. So co-sign that. And then also, so I'll do my little commercial for this because I'm telling everyone about it because it's such a good freaking deal to offer to your team. If you are a member of the Brewers Association, look into their deal with the Healthiest You telehealth app. It's not health insurance. It's just a virtual telehealth thing. But I literally have people getting free therapy, free doctor visits, free psychiatry, free dermatology, and it costs me like $11 a month per employee. Oh, wow. So even if you can't offer the full-on health insurance, it doesn't replace it, but at least it's something to be like, here you go. You need antibiotics for your sinus infection. At least you don't have to pay to go see the doctor, So it's been hugely helpful for us. So that's one thing. Look into that.
I'm so glad you got to plug that.
Dude, I'm like a commercial for this thing because it's so valuable.
That's awesome. Great.
So that's actually why I asked you to be on this panel. And it's funny, we got
right, yeah.
You mentioned it. You would put that in the comments somewhere. I'm like, I have to message Melissa right now.
Yeah, dude.
I love it.
And seriously, message me. And I'm melissa@lovecitybrewing.com. Email me if you have questions about it. I'm happy to talk about it anytime.
No, Lois, how about you? What's something you hope, a brewery manager takes away from today or an employee does after listening?
Honestly, appreciation goes such a long way. If you make your employees feel valued and heard and appreciated, man, they keep showing up, appreciation seriously goes a long way.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Lois. Last but not least, Nicki, you're up. You've given so many great little, tips today.
I guess I would say, so many of the things that I do for my employees have cost me zero money. And and money is real when you're a brewery owner. And so I guess I would say take 2 minutes and think about every single person on your team and what's one little free thing you can do for them right now, whether it's text them an article that is relevant to something you guys talked about, or check in on how their kid that they told you about is doing, or ask them about some side project, or just think about each individual one and think about what you could give them today that takes 2 minutes just to acknowledge that what they're dealing with right now, or help them with whatever they're dealing with right now.
Focus on the individualized experience. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, everyone listening, I hope you had that one actionable takeaway from today. And Melissa, Lois, LaShanda, and Nicki, such great insight. I appreciate you all being here, sharing your unique perspectives. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of Panel Fest. Have a great day. Cheers, everybody.
Awesome.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.